You're listening to NFRN The Drive, your place for NFRN, NASCAR, and motorsport news. Hello everybody, Colin Denton here with RVN. Hope all the American viewers had a great 4th of July, and we're hoping to see some fireworks here today with a double dose of races in the NFRN Truck Series and the NFRN Open Modified Series. An off week for both the Amateur and the Elite Cup Series, and Open Modified Series making its debut to all the part-time truck drivers. We'll get into that a little bit later. It's been a little while since we had an episode. We've had 2 separate race weekends take place that we do want to go over and look back at how we've gotten to the place that we're at right now. The obvious place to start is at the Elite Cup Series level, picking up where we left off, Twin Ring Motegi. A lot of action going on. First lap, little contact between Eric Monaco, Rampage. They get a little loose, they save it. The next lap though, a couple of guys cannot. Big hit on the inside wall by David Davidson, ran down there by Nick Smith. The 98 goes around as well. A little bit of a clog back there. They get it all going. The 11 car drops out. Little contact there between the 0, 2, and 11, causing the accordion effect. Cody Hagan gets into the wall from contact with Dwayne Calloway. That would bring out a caution, but it wouldn't end the intensity coming back to the line as 2 sets of drivers hit the wall. Stuart Gradden had the Pikes Peak win earlier this year, involved in this one. And then Kenny Knox, huge hit right there as he gets hit by Jet Kraus. Takes a tumble there. Eli Bright comes in a little too far out from the pit lane wall, but the next lap it'd be even worse with Chris Harley taking a huge hit into the end of the wall. NASCAR Fan 19 had a late entry as well, gets collected, and Gerardo Ron. On the restart, a little bit too much space given right there for a wide situation. Amethyst Ashley hits the wall. Johnny Gardner collected. 3 car goes for a spin. 84 Baskinger gets collected in that one. And a little bit further down the race as we're getting into closing laps, multi-car accident in the back of the field as they try to battle for positions. It'd be a duel to the end as Dwayne Calloway tried to fight off Dale Jr. Fan 88-83. 76 makes a move to the inside of him, but 93 pulls the crossover and tries to make it work down into 1 and 2. And the 93 would end up taking the race victory from out of Japan. Another part-timer taking away a win. Kenny Knox able to do it earlier in the season at Mirage. That's the second Amateur Cup Series driver to steal away a win at the Elite Cup level. Zachary Fitzwater Sr. with a great second place run, trying to find his way back into some consistency this season. Connor Mays also a great part-time run from him in 4th place. Brad Stover and Reese Butcher would share the points lead at this point, but we also have the next race at 8 Bowl. Very familiar with the super speedways at this point in the season. Noah Cars, Johnny Gardner would be the front row on that one, but they couldn't even make it through a turn before contact and draft between the 24 of Carranza and the 23 of Brock. Sends multiple cars in the back of the field for a ride. Not too many cars dropped out after this one, as only some sustained some damage. But a big tumble right here as almost half the field gets caught up in this one, and half the field drops out of the race entirely as a bunch of cars flying all around at high speeds. A very dangerous situation. Fortunately, no one injured in that accident. That would lead to some pretty intense racing, even the part-timer Craig Martin getting a few laps led. A little bit of contact here, though, that he'd get involved in with the draft from Noah Cars, running down into David Davidson and Johnny Gardner. That would hold up the 11, who was having a great day. Then contact on pit lane between Noah Cars and Ryan Maiden's going to damage up Jack Porkins, who was having a great run as well. NASCAR Fan 19 trying to get up to speed. Donnie Moore comes back up on him, and they get both into the wall, and Moore would take the heavier damage out of that one. That would set up a 1-lap shootout. Philip Fry, all he had to do was hold off the 4 car, and he did just that as he found his way to the checkered flag first and taking it to victory lane. Philip Fry grabbing his playoff clinching victory. Johnny Gardner for a solid second place run, able to find his way back up the standing chart just as his teammate did the week before. Craig Martin, the highest part-timer in that one, coming up in 4th place. Amethyst Ashley pointing her way back into the top 10 after she was kind of running mid-pack for a while there. You can see the rest of the field at the bottom. John Arndt would end up taking the points lead after that one, despite finishing 16th, next to some of the other higher guys having terrible days. On to the Amateur Cup Series, though. John Gilbert, Jacob Rose on the front row of that one. And just like we saw in the Elite Cup Series, a big tumble, a lot of crashing in that first and second corner, the first loop, you could call it, for the figure eight. Adam Kuhn with a very terrifying tumble as he would get clipped on the apron. And the accident wouldn't end there. In fact, in the front pack, there's a little bit of contact happening that would send Griffin Lynn and Shane Borland into that inside wall. Mike Simpson getting tossed up there, and Robert Harrison taking a lot of damage. Then a little bit later in the race, contact between Alonso and Thales sends the 80 car around. Anthony Lopez, Colin Lindsay, both getting a little bit of damage. And then lap traffic getting in the way here. Ray Chapman becomes a pick for Sparky the Sun Devil, holds off the rest of the pack, and then that pack, running a little bit slowly, gets caught up by Eric Van Arsdale, TJ Smith, who make contact, hit the wall, collect Kyle Bichelia, and they go for a spin just before the end of this one. And then coming up a little hot, Kevin Knight, Joey Radcliffe hits a guardrail on the inside of pit lane, and that would be the end of his day, as Sparky would take the checkered flag, win the second race for Ramco, which is going to be a little bit of spoiler for the next race we're going to feature. Kenny Knox still looking for a victory in the Amateur Cup Series to clinch a playoff spot, as he's already won in the Elite Cup Series, but he'll take it home second today, as obviously it was a little bit of a roadblock by the 25 to give any other guys a chance. Barry Watson also having a very solid top 5 day. Chase Baldwin with a great top 10 run, and all 5 winners would be in the top 10 in standings. And now our Truck Series race from Twin Ring Motegi. We see Adam Lewis and Recency on the front row, but lap 1 had a ton of stuff going on. First, some contact in the very rear of the field. Benjamin Roberts getting into the wall. That would be damage that would send him out of the race. Then Luke Evans and Keith Young make contact. Adam Kuhn gets collected into the wall. They would both run up there, and the 86 would spin. Coming off that corner, Taylor Pig, Justin McConnell make contact. They run and make a spin that causes a big traffic jam right in the middle of the racetrack. James Smith kind of at the forefront of that one, as everyone gets caught up in that one, and that would end up resulting in Billy Thompson getting his rear wheels picked up off the ground. And then even further down the racetrack, the pole sitter Lewis gets turned around and then makes huge contact on that outside wall, and that would be damage that would take him out of the race. And definitely not the result he was looking for. A little later on, during pit stops, or just as they were starting, Ryan Parsons goes around on the front bumper of Ross Kispin. Clint McComb's lucky strategy of coming down that time around was going to be able to give him the lead on the ensuing restart. He was able to hold off the entire field and find victory lane, and that would be the first win for Ramco, for Sparky's second win for the team. And now the Elite Cup Series counterparts are still looking for their victories so far. Ross Kispin would take his car up to second place, and Recency had a hard time in this first 2 races. Gets third place. Great run by Jeff Cabico. In fourth place, the part-timer making his first start. And you can see that the 3 winners up there in the top 10 standings at the moment. Tyler Reed would take the points lead despite finishing 21st. Now, 8 Bowl for the Elite Cup Series was race number 8, quite ironically, but that also marks the halfway point of the regular season for the series. And we also got our next edition of Power Rankings. Now, obviously, these rankings don't deviate too far from the current standings, but they do also take into consideration momentum, veteran status, all of those different factors. And we saw a lot of different movement happen throughout the Power Rankings. Taking a look at some of the biggest gainers and losers out of the latest edition, William Brock moved up 14 spots. He really gained from where he was at week number 4. Obviously, the win at Ricky really helped, but he maintained that consistency. Got a few top 10s along the way, putting himself up there at 6th in the standings now. Eric Monaco also jumped up there at 11th, as he's seeking his way through the top 10 in points. Jake Baskinger, Caleb Campbell, Johnny Garner, all up 10 spots because they've put up great runs in the past 4 weeks. Meanwhile, the biggest losers, Jet Krause and Cody Hagan, both going down 16 spots. And Jet Krause is really one of those boom or bust guys. He's either ran top 10 or DNF'd in every race this season. And at this point, it's been looking a bit sour for the 34 car, especially as of late, as he's experienced 4 straight DNFs. Meanwhile, Cody Hagan is doing about the same. Nick Smith veteran status not really playing a part here, as he is really struggling in this second season of his. A lot of other veterans are also struggling, but this is one that really looked like he was going to start off pretty well and then really fell off in the past 4 races. The other JR also looked like he was off to a solid start, got a top 5 at Pikes Peak, and then kind of faded away from there, especially compared to his RP7 counterparts. So those guys are definitely looking for where their performance is going to go. William Brock has his win locked up, but none of the guys below that know where they're going to stand in the playoffs. And now we turn our attention to the Truck Series, obviously the next race up. Racing today at Trenton, going to see who's going to be the next driver to clinch a spot in the playoffs and compete for a championship. But also we have a new crop of drivers coming in, 20 different part-timers added to the field today, and they're all going to start their competition right here at Trenton as well as in the Open Modified Series. We're going to take a look at those guys and what rides they're driving. We're going to start off with Fred Bao. The number 5 Toyota will be driven by him. He's out of China, and that's our first driver from that country. Ashlyn Boyd's going to be driving the number 10 Chevrolet for this race. Kyle Langland in the number 11 Toyota. Tanya Breyer from out of Monaco will be piloting the number 13 Toyota for today's race. She is our second female driver in the league, and with this Ashley in the League Cup Series being our first. Richard Fridge will be in the number 15 Chevrolet, and Addison Steinbeck in the number 16. Moving on to the next page, we have Brandon Figueroa in the number 20 Chevrolet, Vincent Stromberg in the number 22 Toyota, Jonathan Wong in the number 33 Chevrolet, James Johnson from the UK in the number 39 Chevrolet, Juan Garcia from out of Mexico in the number 40 Chevrolet, and Andrew Gorman in the number 41. Gabe Finney will be piloting the number 43 Ford F-150. Diego Yepes from out of Venezuela in the number 44 Chevrolet today. Christian Vargas in the number 45 Chevrolet. Justin Carr piloting the number 50. Derek Campbell in the number 63. And Daniel Macamo in the 94. And the final 2 drivers for today's debuts are Justin Zeidel and Chris Stottlemyre. So a lot of international presence in today's group of debuters. We also include a couple of guys that we know will be entered for race number 5. That list is not complete as the signups for that race moving onward is still up. But Jason Hars and Ryan Reed will be on the entry list for race number 5 when they go to Oswego. And all the trucks that we've seen on this list are going to be tied to the modifieds that these guys will be racing in their first round of the Open Modified Series. We'll take a look at the other drivers as well, and you can take a look at all of the guys that have run, are continuing to run. They're basically all in the same rides for now. A little bit of shuffling can happen from race to race based on standings, but so far that hasn't happened yet. And so you can see where everyone else is going to be related to their cars that they'll see in the Open Modified Series. All of those entered today. Now we've got a little bit of time left in this episode of The Drive, so let's take a look at where the NASCAR standings are right now, because they are approaching playoff time. That's coming up in just a couple of months at this point. But the disparity between some of these series drivers qualifying for the playoffs so far, quite slim, as we can tell by the fact that the last time we had an episode of The Drive, we said that there were 6 winners in the Cup Series, and that number is still the same as it's been the Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr., Clint Bowyer Show, Joey Logano, and Austin Dillon also slapping on a couple of wins there as well. But those guys have been all of the winners we've had so far this season. And we had a fan polls question last episode as well, and not much response to that. But whoever said that we'd be seeing 12 to 14 winners at the end of the regular season, your chances might be going a little bit slim at this point, considering where all the guys are on the standings right now. Look at the standings now. You got 5 of the 6 winners up here in the top 6 in standings, and Kyle Busch is running away with it right now as it relates to the 15 playoff points that the regular season champ will get, and that could be a huge factor in where he ends up at the end of round number 3. Going into the championship 4, he could be way out there, considering he's got 30 playoff points right now with his 5 wins, 5 stage wins as well. He looks like he's on pace for a championship 4 run. Kevin Harvick obviously could be as well, as he could gain 10 playoff points from finishing second. He's at 27 right now. Got five race wins. Had a little bit of trouble with the encumbered victory. We're going to call it encumbered, even though they do not use that term anymore. The encumbered victory at Las Vegas kind of put a damper on his points, because that's why the math might not add up there. But he is still very much in contention to gain some more points. Joey Logano, Martin Truex Jr. also up there. Truex and Boyer with the other two double-digit playoff points at this point. Really looking good at this point. But Brad Keselowski, the top guy up there without a win so far, trying to get the playoff points as well. You got Kurt Busch. SHR looking just very stellar at this point. In fact, you've got all three of the Penske guys up there in the top 10. They're in contention to gain playoff points. Even Eric Almirola a little bit further back in 11th place, still keeping himself in contention, but that looks like you could sweep the playoffs with SHR, with Team Penske. You might get all the JGR guys up there, but you gotta have Suarez pick up a little bit because he is outside the bubble at this point, especially when you bring Austin Dillon back into the picture because he's 19th in points. That cutoff will be between Alex Bowman and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. when you do bring Dillon back up. You can see the gap between Bowman and Stenhouse a bit wide, and you never know if one of those guys outside the top 16 at this point could end up winning a race, but you also kind of think that based on where the performance has been, you think that the people that would be able to win a race at this point would come within the top 16, so it seems like the cutoff is going to happen between Bowman and Stenhouse. But you never know. We're going to Daytona. That's where the wild card is, and that's what could bump someone from the back of the field into the playoffs. Now, if you're doing the math on percentages, technically the Xfinity guys have less of their field filled than the Monster Energy Series does. They've got 3 drivers out of 12 spots here filled. Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, Justin Allgaier have all gotten their wins, but a lot of Cup guys have been spoiling the opportunities for guys to win their way into the playoffs. Christopher Bell got his win at Richmond, Tyler Reddick at Daytona. Justin Allgaier winning twice this season, but obviously one of those being encumbered. Fortunately, won another and was able to make sure that he was guaranteed in. Not that he had much of a problem doing that anyway. Just some good momentum. And at the top of the leaderboard, 3-car battle, Elliott Sadler outside of the top spot for what seems like forever. Obviously, he hasn't gotten a title, but he seems to always be in the lead when it comes to point standings. He seemed to be there all the way last season. He got the 15 playoff points from that. This season, just a little bit sluggish compared to these guys coming up and racing really hard. He had a bad week at Iowa that really set him back, and then Cole Custer and Daniel Hemrick able to pass him up this past weekend at Chicagoland. Custer's still lacking playoff points as Sadler has 4 stage wins, Hemrick has 2, Jones has 1 as well down there in 7th place. We're keeping an eye on the bubble for the playoffs at this point because it seems like you have the competitive guys you know are going to win. And at this point, they're all kind of keeping in that space, which when we're looking at the cutoff spot, it's now between Ross Chastain and Ryan Sieg. You lost Spencer Gallagher because of his suspension. That win does not put him in the playoffs because he missed races. John Hunter Nemechek is up there, but he's not full-time, even though he's in 15th place. Right now, you got a big gap between Chastain and Sieg fighting for that last playoff spot, which could be a big deal for JD Motorsports. Has never made the playoffs at this point. Chastain's as close as they've gotten, and he is just driving the wheels off a team that really has been not the fastest on the racetrack. They're kind of mid-tier in terms of their cars, but Chastain really knows how to drive, and he's doing really well. Putting that into the playoff spot right now. Going to see if he can finish that off, though. A little bit further down here, you've got Kaz Growell, who's looked really flashy with Fury race cars, but with JGL Racing, he really struggled, and that is really set him back in terms of if this team can actually make it to the end of the season, he's kind of put himself in a hole in terms of fighting his way back up on points. Could he get a win? We'll have to see, but that's a pretty long shot at this point, unless maybe he pulls one out at Daytona. If you're counting percentages, once again, this is the highest percentage of spots filled, 50%, 4 of 8. You have Johnny Sauter, who's been really dominant throughout this entire season, 4 wins. 22 playoff points. Noah Gragson grabbed his victory early on. Brett Moffitt has taken any type of truck and put it in victory lane, even though that team is really struggling on funding. Hoping to see them make their way to Kentucky next week, but we're unsure about that right now. Stuart Friesen's been really consistent, still 140 points back though, but he does have a solid opportunity to make the playoffs at this point. Grant Enfinger's also been really solid with motorsport, his second year with the team, bringing it on, trying to see if he can make the playoffs this time around. You got the winner at Gateway, Justin Haley, down here as well. He's locked in. Matt Crafton, though, he's kind of struggled, but it does seem like the gap between 8th and 9th at this point is a bit wide. It all comes down to if one of those guys below the cutoff line, Myatt Snyder, Cody Coughlin, Dalton Sargent, Todd Gilliland, if one of those guys wins a race, then the gap between Matt Crafton and Ben Rhodes, teammates, that becomes the difference at the cutoff spot, which means Crafton's in a bit of a tight situation at the moment. That's not to say that Ben Rhodes isn't either. He's going to have to pick his performance up as well. Despite the limited number of trucks that you really consider competitive to move on to the playoffs, the battle is still very tight. Well, we aren't going to waste any more time. It's time to go NFRN racing with the trucks and the open modifieds. We're going to make a quick couple of announcements, though, as we make every time we do an episode. Starting with the 24-hour race. Here's the details you need to know. The race includes teams of 3 to 5 drivers rotating throughout a 24-hour race. Teams can be formed within the NFRN forum page, which requires a sign-up, and you're not restricted to drivers or teams staying with the teams that they're on for this particular event. If you drive in this league, you're eligible to join. Even if you're a part-time truck driver that just signed up, you're able to get into this race. All you got to do is go down to the video in the description, and there's 2 forms to sign up. So you can either build a team right away, as long as you have all the information, which would include the driver's name and email. So make sure you know that information going ahead. Or you can also be auto-assigned to a team based on what manufacturer you would prefer. And the best way to get information from this league is to join our Discord. Down in the description, the first link you'll see, that's where you can join the Discord. You can get all the updates and information right away, and you can also interact with all the other drivers in the NFRN, as well as the ASCA, which obviously I am the commentator for the Copperhead Amateur Series, and that will continue on into Season 5, if you didn't know that already. So now we set the stage for Trenton Fairgrounds Raceway. 42 trucks ready to get going, and one of them's going to come out victorious. Will it be a full-timer ready to make his way into the playoffs? We are about to find out, but first we have Open Modified Series Racing with our part-time truckers. From NFRN and RVN, my name is Colin Denton. Good night, and good riddance.
No!